Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode number 3 of Wednesday Wisdom. I hope that this morning finds you well rested. I know you're probably getting ready for work or getting your family ready, your children ready to go to school. So I certainly don't want to keep you very long, but I just appreciate the fact that you're tuning in, that you're part of this devotional. You know, one of the great pieces of wisdom that I have received throughout the years, and I can't remember where I first heard it or who first said it, but I'm sure you are familiar with it, and that is that you begin with the end in mind. In other words, you know where you want to be, and so you start on the path that will lead you there. And it has been an invaluable piece of wisdom for me. Sometimes it's just as simple as helping me develop a lesson or a Bible class. In other cases, it has helped me with choosing what college I would attend a few years back and what major I would select and put my time in. You know, the same thing goes for all of us, though. I think that it has great application for us in that if we will begin with the end in mind, we can be on the right path. In Proverbs chapter 3, in a very famous section of Proverbs, Solomon tells us what we should do when it comes to beginning with the end in mind and the things that surround it. I want to read it to you from Proverbs 3, beginning with verse 5. You are probably familiar with it. You may be able to even quote it, but I'd like for you to hear it from the angle of beginning with the end in mind, and we'll come back and talk about it a little bit as soon as we're done. So Proverbs 3, beginning with verse number 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. Most likely we've heard this section of Proverbs when our kids graduated, or when we have celebrated seniors or college students, when they have made a great accomplishment and now they're getting ready to embark into this world and face everyday decisions that will impact them for years and years to come. What I like about how Solomon has built these Proverbs is he tells us in verse 6 the end. He tells us where we all want to be. It doesn't really matter in what aspect of life. We all want to walk the straight path. That's exactly what he says, Proverbs 3 and verse 6, that we want those straight paths. And so then the question that the reader would want to ask Solomon, or that maybe comes to their own mind, is, well, Solomon, if the end is that I want to be on the straight path, well, where do I begin? And Solomon answers in two ways. One, Solomon would tell us, well, let me tell you where not to begin. Don't begin with you. That's the admonition of verse 5, where he says, lean not on your own understanding. And then if you look at verse 7, be not wise in your own eyes. If you want to walk the straight path, it doesn't begin with you. It doesn't begin with me. We want to be on that straight path, but we got to know the right place, the right person, and where to start. And Solomon is very upfront with us. It doesn't begin with me. That the accomplishment of being on the straight path isn't going to come from my own wisdom. It isn't going to come from my own understanding. And the reason for that is because I don't know everything. No matter if I were to live years and years and years on this earth, I would still never have enough knowledge to gain enough wisdom to have enough understanding. At the end of the day, just simply because of being human, I am just incapable of having all that I need in order to make the right decision that will either put me or keep me on the right path. So Solomon tells us where not to begin. Don't begin with you. And that's when he comes back and he says, now that we have that out of the way, Let me tell you where to begin. The first half of verse 5, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Verse 7, the second half of that, fear the Lord. That all wisdom, all knowledge, all understanding, that if we want to utilize those things to get us and to keep us on the right path and on the straight path, and knowing that it can't start with me, Solomon points us to God himself, that he is our starting place. Now, on our very first episode, we talked about that, and Solomon even lived this out by taking God upon his request for wisdom. Remember, if God came to Solomon in a dream and said, I will give you anything and everything that you would ask for. Solomon, seeing what was going to happen, knowing that he was going to be king and that everybody was going to be impacted by his decisions, asked God for discernment, for wisdom, so that he could lead himself and God's people on the path that God would have them. What's inherent about that choice, though, is that Solomon was willing to trust that God knew what he was doing. It's one thing to know that God has all the wisdom and all the understanding. It's a completely different thing to trust God in his wisdom and his understanding. That may be why Solomon starts this section with trust in the Lord. Many of us here this morning, we know that God is the beginning. He is the source. He and his word is where we need to go for wisdom, for understanding, for discernment, for instruction, for so many other things. The test today is whether I'm going to trust him or not. It's easy for me to trust myself. It's easy for me to be wise in my own eyes. It's easy for me to lean on my own understanding. It's a different story to trust in the Lord with all of the heart. That instead of leaning on my understanding, I'm going to lean on him. I'm going to lean in him. I'm going to look to God for all that I need. And that's the wisdom of that saying, like we began this devotional with, begin with the end in mind. If the end is to walk on the straight path, then not just start with God, but trust God. Trust God with every decision that needs to be made. Trust God with every choice that needs to be made. Trust God with everything of who you are. Trust him with all of your heart. But something that is also tied with that trust comes in verse 7 when he says, fear the Lord. Now Solomon said in Proverbs 1:7 that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And we know that the fear of the Lord comes in two different aspects. One in terms of respecting God, and then the other is truly fearing him, knowing him as the creator, and that we are the created. But embedded even in this idea of fearing the Lord is submitting. That if I want the straight path, not only do I need to trust him, but I need to fear him enough that I will submit to him. That may be what Solomon means when he says, in all of your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. That submission is a key. It's an outward show of the trust that I have in God. That if I'm going to trust him with all of my heart, then my life is going to reflect that trust by submitting to his way, submitting to his wisdom, submitting to his understanding. So my encouragement for you is that as this day begins, whether it is before you get to work or if you're already at work, whatever it is, that if you want to walk the straight path today and for the days that will come after, don't begin with you. Begin with God. And move from just knowing that he has all wisdom to trusting his wisdom and then submitting to his wisdom. And if you will be willing to do that, if you're willing to acknowledge him in all of your ways, then the path that you walk will be made straight by him. And it will lead you to where you want to go in this life and, Lord willing, in the life to come. Hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope that you will have a wonderful day, a safe day. I look forward to seeing you tonight at our Bible study here at the Raleigh Church of Christ at 7 p.m. Of course, we have classes for all ages. If you're unable to join us tonight, we hope that you will join us Sunday morning at 9:30 for Bible study and 10:30 for our Sunday morning worship. As always, keep in the back of your mind that we'll have a Wednesday Wisdom every Wednesday at 6:45 a.m. here on the Raleigh Church of Christ Facebook page. I hope you have a great day and a blessed day. Bye-bye.